I don't know if it's just me, but I've never felt more politically isolated than I do at this current moment in time. Political discourse and really the political sphere as a whole seems to be almost entirely dominated by radical political extremism to a degree and scale at which I don't think we've ever seen in this country before. Radical is becoming the new norm. I feel like your average American nowadays has been totally drowned out and silenced by the noise of those who will sacrifice anything and everything to dominate the narrative, seize control of the country, and hold unchecked power over the people. And it's in this ruthless pursuit of power where they have completely lost touch with common humanity and moral decency. And we're at a point now where both sides openly justify and cheer for the total obliteration of all human life that dares to oppose their worldviews. A lot of average people and potential voters are being pushed away through this hyper-polarized landscape of constant extremist rhetoric on behalf of both sides, Russian nesting dolls of ideological purity testing, radicalizing events dominating the headlines endlessly, and echo chambers created by social media algorithms and shamelessly biased media outlets. And all of these things ultimately serve one purpose, and that purpose is to indoctrinate you. I feel like political parties aren't just political parties anymore. They operate more like ideological cults, and simply asking for your vote will no longer suffice, because you as an individual are only worth what you're willing to contribute to further advance the power structure of said party's oligarchic elite, and your vote is just the bare minimum. These days, that's only the entry fee. No, you better be willing to live for them, kill for them, and most importantly, die for them. And these political figures exploit your devotion every step of the way.
Hey, so look, I'm just gonna come out and say it. I don't really care about the consequences anymore. I don't care. We need to kill these people. There's just an alternative. I don't care if you say, oh, I've got the crazy eyes, whatever. Yeah, I do feel crazy because we've had 3 people die in 72 hours, and we've had over almost 30 die in the last year to a group of quote-unquote law enforcement that is basically just buffed up mall cops. Peyton said it best. They're Nazis. And the only way to stop this shit, let's be honest, is going to be to get violent. We got to get violent, people. And I'm tired of denying it, and I'm tired of y'all being pussies about it. Grow up! You guys are sitting there holding up fucking signs and saying, oh, I'm mad at you. You're pathetic! Burn something!
We've got this armchair activist LARPing as some revolutionary freedom fighter from the shelter of his own cozy little comfort corner, telling everybody else to grow up as he sits on his bed, screaming at his phone while surrounded by a bunch of shonen anime posters. He refuses to do as much as get out of bed, yet he's sitting there calling active protesters pathetic pussies for not stepping up and killing federal law enforcement. Like I just said, your vote is not enough anymore to those who have been ideologically captured. If you're not willing to kill or be killed for the cause, you are pathetic to them. This isn't about whether you're willing to support or not, it's about whether you're willing to sacrifice or not. You see, people like this guy here would rather outsource their dirty work to others because they're too lazy and afraid to go do that dirty work themselves. If this were such a moral imperative, you'd be out there acting upon your own demands. But you're not. I guess your precious revolution can wait until you're no longer afraid to live by what you preach for. If you're actually foolish enough to act upon the demands of those who call for extreme action yet are too afraid to take extreme action themselves, you'll likely lose everything in the process. And instead of them losing everything alongside you for this great cause, they'll instead be recording your loss from the sidelines so they can turn your sacrifice into their engagement. See, these are the videos our algorithms constantly push upon the masses. They cherry pick the most outrageous, radical, and extreme reactions to the world around us and inject it directly into our brains, distorting our worldviews and fooling us into thinking that this is the norm. But this is only to be expected due to the fact that these sorts of videos generate the most clicks and engagement. Calm and rational voices tend to be drowned out by these loud extremists, and so those who create the biggest spectacle online tend to be pushed to the forefront of political discourse. But people who lean towards such extremism on social media typically only do so because of that direct incentive of boosted exposure. More often than not, these people don't even live what they preach. This method of indirect silencing is why extremist rhetoric constantly dominates social spaces in regards to politics, and this is a big reason why a lot of average people feel so ostracized in the world of politics today. It seems sometime as of late we've officially crossed the threshold of how political identity is internalized and how political affiliation is perceived. Political affiliation is no longer just a preference, and political identity is no longer separate from one's actual self-identity. This is why an attack on one's political views views is now perceived as an attack on one's self. And when a threat to one's ideology is perceived as a threat to one's self, this then justifies any course of action, no matter how extreme, to defend that ideology, because it's now a defensive response in order to maintain one's very existence. And this creates a bit of a tricky situation. When somebody's ideological group identity ranks above their own personal morality, their personal conscience gets outsourced to the ideological group they belong to. This creates a collective hive mind effect where the political party or ideological group dictates your morals from the top down, overriding your own independent judgment. This is why you see such inconsistent morals on each side, because those morals only exist within the ever-changing boundaries of what their political cult is currently approving or condemning at that very moment. But there's no actual static moral foundation. This would explain why the No Kings, No Dictators protests swiftly turned into the Free Maduro protests, or how the Free Palestine movement turned into the Complete Silence movement when it comes to events like the atrocities taking place in Sudan, Iran, etc. It would also explain how mocking the dead is only reprehensible when it's being done by those you stand ideologically opposed to, or how draining the swamp only applies to political adversaries and not when it comes to the Epstein files. And you see, this selective outrage may look hypocritical at first glance, which it absolutely is, but the hypocrisy isn't just some lapse in moral consistency, but rather a direct consequence of unwavering, stubborn, ideological consistency. It's not about the principle, it's about the narrative. And another thing I couldn't help but notice is the martyr complex both political parties have been playing into as of late. It seems like each side is clamoring for not just a member of the other side to be killed because they hate each other, but also they secretly want one of their own to be killed by the opposing side, because they're just salivating for the opportunity to play victim and point the finger so they can martyr one of their fallen comrades and paint the other side to be the violent and aggressive oppressor, so they can justify their own violent and aggressive response and sell it off as retaliation or justice. See, the victimhood narrative is very powerful because it grants one the moral high ground, which enables them to then frame aggressive or extreme actions as necessary and righteous acts of self-defense. So where are we at now? Well, I believe we're at a point where the hatred and resentment both political parties have for each other right now runs so deep that soon enough, the only way the two will be able to coexist peacefully is by not coexisting at all. I don't believe the left and the right can afford to continue amping up the rhetoric like they are right now for much longer without our country eventually reaching some sort of dramatic boiling point. At the end of the day, all I can really ask is just try your best to not become ideologically captured by these persuasive political figures. You have to be able to think for yourself. I'm not saying that you can't have strong convictions in your beliefs or be passionate about them, but don't allow yourself to be ideologically captured and outsource your conscience to a political party. A political party, mind you, that will always prioritize and serve its own best interests before your own. Look, stay skeptical, be an independent thinker. That's something I preach often around here. I'm a big believer in that. Try your best to develop your own thoughts and opinions on things. Don't just wait for your favorite political streamer to go live to tell you what to think about this week's newest trending headline so you could be utilized as nothing more than disposable material as they brainwash you into throwing yourself in front of gunfire in the pursuit of their own power. And most importantly, remember, the media is your enemy, so listen closely, fact check everything, and stay safe. And before I get out of here, I just want to say one last thing. I may get some comments asking like, why does this matter? Why do you care about this so much? Why'd you take a break from playing your little video games to talk politics today? Well, I just feel like we are living in the midst of a political circus, and all this incessant extremism does is erode the quality of our politicians, who instead of debating ideas and presenting themselves with class, now bicker back and forth like children and post memes making fun of each other's appearances on X. I would just like to live in a world where instead of choosing between the lesser of two evils, we don't have to choose evil at all.